All right, now the future of Virgin Airlines is still up in the air as the airline moves into voluntary administration tomorrow after crisis talks with New South Wales and Queensland failed to produce enough money to save the struggling airline. Now, the company has reportedly been offered a number of offers from foreign investors, but One Nation leader Pauline Hanson argues the national airline carrier shouldn't be in the hands, certainly of the Chinese. Joining me now is One Nation leader Pauline Hanson. Great to see you, Pauline. Look, this is a nonsense, isn't it, that some of these Chinese airlines are hovering behind the scenes trying to pick up Virgin? It would be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
Certainly would be. And reading back my comments on the my Facebook page, the Australian people do not want China involved in ownership of Virgin Airlines. They are so over China and they just want them out of our country. They are sick and tired of seeing them own our assets, our housing, our agricultural land. They don't want anything to do with China.
Pauline, I've got to give you some credit here. I know you've copped a lot of flack over the years. You've been called a whole range of things by many on the left. You've warned us about the Chinese, and I think a lot of people are now coming to the conclusion that they've acted absolutely abominably in the way they've handled the coronavirus and the way in which they've been very slow off the mark to let the West know about the extent of this virus. Donald Trump in America is livid. He's pulled the funding from the World Health Organization because he believes they were in a conspiracy with the Chinese to keep it from the West. What are your thoughts on how we should progress with our relationship with China going forward?
Peter, look, my concern was that we were actually the free trade agreements, we were dependent on imports into Australia, which destroyed our industries and manufacturing. And a lot of it actually ended up in the hands of China, who have spread their tentacles around the world and done the same in many other countries. America lost its industries and manufacturing. Since Trump's been back in, he's built it back up again, so they're self-reliant. I've always said that. I'm not against free trade, but fair trade. You can't compete with countries that are only paying a few dollars a day to their workers and expect us to maintain our standard of living and way of life. And we've lost our independence in Australia to produce the products that we need for our own survival. It's a big problem now because we import so much. If you go to the shelves in our shopping or Bunnings or wherever, everything's made in China. So until we actually start industries and manufacturing, and the government has to support these businesses to start manufacturing a lot of these things in Australia so that we don't need the imports. I'd put tariffs back on imports coming into Australia to make it more competitive with the Australian product if we're going to pay the same wages and standard of living we're going to have in Australia. So it has to be a slow process. We can't cut China off because we rely on too much of their product for our needs in Australia. But steel, okay, start manufacturing the steel that we need. You've only got Whyalla, the steel mills there. We import so much steel, the rubbish steel from China. We should be making your own steel in Australia. You know, there's so much, Peter. I'm sick and tired of seeing them buying up our assets, our agricultural land. They're going from paddock to plate in their own country, and we're doing ourselves such a disservice and losing so much product in Australia.
Pauline, how do we reboot our manufacturing? How do we use this as an opportunity, this terrible time that we're in now, to reassess, to recalibrate, to reboot manufacturing in this country?
What you need to do is the governments and the state governments need to play a big part in this and get rid of the payroll tax. They need, and the federal government needs to offer tax incentives to those people who set up industries and manufacturing outside of the cities. So rural and regional Queensland, as in New South Wales and other states, will benefit from this, that manufacturing will start up in their country towns and jobs will be created. That's what we need to do. So a tax haven needs to be created and payroll tax. So the further you go from the city, then you reduce the payroll tax or increase the threshold levy. So it will help people to actually move to these areas. You look at tax incentives by the federal government. We need to actually cut the red tape that it takes 2.5 years to start up a business in Australia whether it's local, state or federal governments, we need to encourage businesses, cheaper loans. The government must encourage cheaper loans, and you've got to put on the tariffs, as I said. So give those businesses, say, right, I can now compete with the cheap imports coming into Australia because now the tariffs are on. The tariffs will actually give us tax into the coffers of the federal government.
All right, Virgin Airlines, so important for regional Australia, so important for the bush. They're in dire straits, voluntary administration tomorrow. There are some organisations, private investors hovering behind the scenes. But to actually keep them alive, Pauline, it looks almost certain as if we'll have to get some Commonwealth money involved. Certainly New South Wales and New South Wales and Queensland governments are sort of really vying to try and rescue them at the moment. What would you do with Virgin right now? Would you bail them out?
No, I wouldn't bail them out at all. See, Virgin, as I said, is 91% is owned by foreign companies or organisations. Only 9% is, you've got the shareholders, mum and dads that are involved in Virgin. Virgin hasn't paid tax in Australia for 7 years, and yet they had a turnover over $24 billion, never paid tax here in Australia. That's been shifted to tax havens in the Cayman Islands or wherever, so they're not paying taxes, and you've got billionaires that are the ownership of the Virgin Airlines. I fly Virgin most of my time. I love the service. I think the staff, everyone is absolutely fantastic. But Peter, people must understand, we've actually lost 55 airlines in Australia. 55. That's how many have gone under in Australia. We cannot get involved in propping up Virgin as we did with the car industry, injecting $500 million a year for 20 years, and it still went under. You've got to have a business. These people that have invested in Virgin, they've got to prop it up, not the Australian taxpayer, because the assets aren't there. All right, the planes are leased. They don't pay tax here in Australia, so I just don't believe it's the government. I want competition in Australia, by all means. I don't particularly want Qantas to have the whole lot because I know the cost of the flights in rural and regional Queensland and Australia because I've actually flown it quite a bit. So I agree with it, but we're going to be in such a debt after the COVID-19, we cannot afford to bail out these billionaires, and it's not fair. And the Australian government and the Australian people don't want China have an input. And I'll tell you, to Josh Frydenberg, you actually allow the sale of this airline to China, the people will be furious and it'll be a nail in the coffin of the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I don't think he will. All right, what about this tracking app, this virus tracking app? Will you be downloading it, Pauline?
No way in the wide world. Not interested. I don't trust the government. I don't trust it. If we now have in Queensland no detection of coronavirus in the last 24 hours, and prior to that it was only 4, and we're on the downhill run, why would you put yourself up for the government to be able to track you? I don't trust them. I want my privacy, and I will not be signing up to it, and I'm not encouraging other Australians to do it. Everyone has a choice, but I'm not encouraging them. I won't be doing it.
And just quickly, Pauline, we are flattening the curve. There was just 1 case in Victoria today, 0 in Queensland, 6 in New South Wales, and yet no politicians prepared to come out in the last 24 hours and say, yes, we will look very closely at lifting those restrictions. They're going to lift the restrictions in New Zealand next week, I see.
Well, they are, and we should do as well. Look, last year we had about 900 deaths due to the influenza. A lot of people have died here in Australia. I'm sorry to the families, the deaths, of these people, but they had underlying health issues. We need to start opening up, getting the economy going, because it's going to take us a while to actually recover from this. And I think we need to start being realistic about it. Stupid Palaszczuk, she says you can't go out on your boat unless you've got 2 people and you've got to be fishing. And then she allows a funeral in Mackay for the Indigenous of 80 people to attend a funeral, and someone from the prison to actually turn up with 6 prison guards. So I read, someone told me on Facebook page, if that is the truth, and they can do, because they allow Aboriginal prisoners out of the prison to attend funerals. What a joke it is. It is such hypocritical and discrimination, and I think wake up to herself, and I think she's using this as a political ploy leading into the election. I understand how people are fearful of it, but if we don't start getting the economy back working again in a measured way, a lot of people are going to lose their properties, their homes, their livelihoods, their jobs, and small business will not open up again.
Pauline Hanson, great to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us on Sky News Across Australia.
My pleasure. Thanks, Peter.